Welcome back to the Make-A-Brick Society. This is our console cleaning best practices video. There will be more videos in the system restoration series, covering controller restoration, handheld cleaning, and optical drive restoration. I am open to making others. Leave a comment below with what you'd like to see. And with that out of the way, let's get into it. Alright, so the things you're going to need are a system that you want to clean, a screwdriver. Depending on your system, you may need a precision one with special bits, a toothbrush, possibly some Q-tips, 99% isopropyl alcohol, and paper towel, a spudger that I forgot to put here, but I'll put an image on screen, and a bucket of water big enough to hold all your parts, or a sink to soak everything in. First step in the disassembly process is to have a look around the system for possible screw locations. If there's a warranty void sticker anywhere on it, there's a good chance there are hidden screws underneath it. Remove any protective covers that could be hiding screws at this point, and put any non-electric components into your cleaning bucket. It is very important to keep your screws organized in such a way that you will remember how they all go back. I've taken the PS2 apart enough times that I just remember, but I recommend using a parts tray or a piece of paper so you can log the location of each screw. With all the visible screws removed, we can try and split the shell, looking for any spot that has resistance, as there may be a hidden screw. And here I found the warranty void sticker holding the two halves together. Now with that removed, we can carefully split the shell. Make sure to do this slowly and watch for cables that connect both sides together, like this one. I like to leave the ribbon cables attached to the main board as long as possible so I can remember where they go. So I look for a way to disconnect it from the other end. In this case, it's the power button, and there's a plastic clip holding it in place. Now we can remove this screw holding the plastic parts to the PCB and disconnect the PCB from the cable. The plastic parts go into the bin, and the PCB gets set aside for electronics cleaning. Now with the top shell free, we look for any other parts that need to be removed from it. The only parts I have are the memory card port covers. I'm going to remove them for cleaning, but you don't have to. They can be effectively cleaned if they're left on. Now with everything removed, the cover can go into the bucket for cleaning. Next we want to look at the remaining shell and see what else needs to be removed to get the other half of the shell free. In my case, that's the fan and power housing, and the controller and memory card ports. The plastic parts go into the bucket, and the fan and ports get left hanging for now. Now we quickly check the bottom shell to make sure there are no electronic parts in it, and then it gets put into the bin. Now if cleaning the shell is your only goal and you're not worried about cleaning the electronic components, you can skip ahead to this timestamp where I'll go through the cleaning, but if you want to go deeper, keep watching. Okay, let's continue disassembly. The next goal is to get your main board free of any other parts. In my case, that's the controller ports, the fan, the DVD drive, and the power supply. As we remove everything, any plastic parts as well as the metal shielding can all go into the bin for cleaning. The DVD drive, fan, and ports will be set aside for electronics cleaning. Now this part's very important. If your system has an internal power supply like mine, you need to be careful. These things can hold a lot of voltage even when the system's been turned off for a long time. Always hold it from the sides and don't set it on a metal surface. We do not clean these as it can be very dangerous. At most, you can use some canned or compressed air, or even just one of those electronic blowers to get the dust out. Now we disconnect the last few things and stop before we remove any kind of heatsink. So let's clean up our work area a little bit. I grabbed a box for the PSU, fan, DVD drive, and ports, but if your table is big enough, you can just move them away for now. Some systems use thermal compound for their heat sinks. If yours does, you may want to get some new thermal compound. In a pinch, you can reuse the old stuff by scraping it all into a little ball and applying it later, but I would really recommend just putting on new stuff. Some systems like this one only use thermal pads, and those can be reused. And now we can go through and remove any heat sinks and any other shielding, so we have a bare board. Any non-electronic parts can go into the bucket, except for any thermal pads and compound, if you're reusing it. That stuff can just get set aside for now. Now with the main board free, we do some visual inspections, looking for any water damage and looking at the caps for any leaking or bulging. It's good to check the power supply at this point too, if it's an open design. If you have any leaking or bulging caps, stop now and decide if it's something you feel confident in replacing yourself. Check YouTube for the process on your specific system. If it's beyond your ability, call some local electronic repair places or check your local online marketplaces for somebody who may be capable of doing the job. If all looks good, continue on to the cleaning. Okay, so now we're going to grab some paper towel and put it on your work surface and place your main board on top of it. Then fill the cap of your isopropyl alcohol bottle and grab your toothbrush. The goal here is to use the ISO as a liquid to clean off dust, debris, or any liquid spills. If there are any liquid spills, you could need a lot more scrubbing. Just be careful not to knock off any components. Also give some extra attention to get inside ports, especially those that are external facing, like the USB and AV ports. The ISO won't hurt them, and they tend to get very dirty. Now with the main board cleaned up, if it uses thermal compound, check to make sure that the chips got cleaned off completely. If not, grab some paper towel and dip it into the ISO and spend some time making sure it's all cleaned off. Now we move on to the other electronic parts, like the fan controller port, power button, and port. With the power board, we clean it same as the main board. With the fan, we dry off the toothbrush and use it as a dry brush to get off as much of the dust and dirt as we can. You can also use compressed or canned air here, but we don't want to use the ISO as it can eat away at the oils and grease inside the fan and cause it to get loud and work poorly. Back to the ISO for the power and controller ports. There was an extra shield I was able to take off and clean the controller port board a little bit better. Just make sure you really get into the ports as they get really grimy. Last up is the DVD drive. I will be doing a special video on this later about lubricating it correctly to restore them back to almost brand new working condition, but not here. Here, we're going to do the same thing as we did with the fan, dry off our toothbrush and brush it down as not to degrade any of the oils. And that's it. If you have any additional parts, follow the same procedure, ISO clean the electronics, and dry clean anything with moving parts like motors. Now on to the non-electronic parts. Lay out some paper towel on an open space near your work area. Then we go through and scrub down all the parts in here with the toothbrush, paying close attention to any of the external parts, as dirt that builds up on these tends to require a lot more scrubbing. If the water is very soapy, make sure that you've gotten all the small parts out. The last thing you want is a power clip or a rubber foot to end up down the drain. Now that everything's clean, let it sit and dry for a few hours. I like to leave them overnight, but if you want to get it reassembled sooner, then you can dry them off now and then let them sit for an hour or so the last little bits of water can dry out. And here we are, it's the next day and everything's all dry. Now we just do all the steps in reverse to get your system reassembled. I'm not going to show that as this video is already incredibly long, but there is one last step once you get it all together. And here, it's all fully assembled. So as you can see, it still looks a little bit dirty in places. I found that using window cleaner or half and half vinegar and water solution sprayed on and wiped off can really make the system look a lot better. It also helps catch spots that looked clean until they dried. So let's do that now. And that's it. Now you've got a shiny system. If you like this video, don't forget to hit like and subscribe. And until next time, remember, it doesn't matter if you make or break, as long as you're having fun.